So this morning I want to talk to you about and share some of the wisdom from one of my favorite teachers. How many of you have favorite teachers? Have any favorite teachers? Yeah? Okay, I have favorite teachers too. Some of them are religious teachers. Jesus is obviously and absolutely a favorite teacher of mine, as is the Buddha and Lao Tzu. And I have favorite teachers like Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela and Mahatma Gandhi. Lots of people that I draw inspiration from, some contemporary and many not. This morning, though, I want to share some teachings from a teacher that I have great admiration and respect for, and that is His Holiness the Dalai Lama. It's interesting to me that I scheduled this talk for this Sunday, having just come back from some international travel. And it was largely because of an interaction I had at our very first synthesis dialogue with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in 1999 in Dharamsala, India. A young person asked him a question, and the question that the person asked was, how do I make a difference in the world? And his answer was short and simple. It was travel and make friends. Travel and make friends. That really stuck with me. It stuck with me in a deep and powerful way, because in that experience in India, sitting at his feet, learning from him and talking to him with leaders that we, the Association for Global New Thought, had gathered together to meet with him and talk about world issues, there was a lot about that experience in India that was very painful and very difficult. And I wasn't so sure that I wanted to do much more travel after that being my first experience out of the United States. But I took to heart what he said, and I thought about it. Travel and make friends. What did he mean? What are the gifts of travel? To me, it is not just about what you see, but it's about who you become as you begin to interact with different people in circumstances and situations that are different than what you normally have at home. As you come face to face maybe with some challenges and difficulties, either in being understood or getting from point A to point B, as you have to perhaps rely on complete strangers to help you if you are lost or confused or need assistance for some reason, travel and make friends. I think he was right, that one of the ways that we can make this world a better place is to expand our sense of the human family, and travel is one of the ways to do it. Now, my talk this morning is not about travel. It really is about who is this man that in 1989 was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, who is the spiritual and political leader of Tibet, a very small nation that is basically being annihilated, their teachings, their practices, their people, their temples, their culture, because of the Chinese. Who is this man, and why should we care? And what in what he has to teach can be helpful to us? There's a lot, I believe. First, he has three main commitments. The first commitment is the commitment of the promotion of human values or human ethics, the promotion of human values, of human ethics. He teaches at every opportunity of the importance to practice loving kindness, to practice compassion, to practice tolerance and forgiveness. All this from a man who personally has seen so much cruelty, so much destruction of the people that he is trying to represent. He is a Buddhist, and one of the concepts in Buddhism is that essentially we are all the same. We might look different on the outside. We might have different customs and cultures. We might have different language and different color of skin. But you peel all that away, and at the heart of us, we are really the same. And if you think about it, the soul, the spirit of us, has no sex, has no age, has no nationality. The very heart of some of his teaching is that we are all the same, that we all essentially want to experience peace and happiness and to not experience pain and suffering. And so he is committed to teaching the kinds of practices that help us to live that way, to reduce suffering for ourselves and others, and to increase a sense of joy and satisfaction. His second commitment is a promotion of religious harmony and understanding. Would you not agree that we need that in the world? Do you find, as I do, that it is incomprehensible to use the word holy right before the word war? Does that just make you go crazy in your head? Holy war? Words that are associated with violence that is rooted in religious differences. And so he understands that we must learn to get along with one another religiously and spiritually. One of the things that means so very much to me about our unity teaching is that we deeply believe in the concept of one God called by many different names, but found through every and any spiritual path. It is perhaps one of the reasons that His Holiness, was very open to the idea of the Association for Global New Thought, which represents unity and the science of mind, that it would be we, alongside of him, that would call together religious leaders and forward-thinking people, scientists and social activists, to meet and talk about world issues from a spiritual point of view. He has said, and I like this a lot, all major world religions have the same potential to create good human beings. I like that all the world's religions have the same potential to create good human beings. To me, that's the essence of religion, or the purpose of it to begin with, to help us be better people, to be more loving, to be more kind, to care about one another consistently and consistently. His third commitment is to the Tibetan cause, to do everything within his power to help save his people and his culture. It's a pretty big order for him. He teaches what he calls secular ethics, and I want to touch upon 4 main ideas right now that are things that you and I can use when we leave here today. He talks about the importance of the practice of self-discipline. The practice of self-discipline. Say that with me. The practice of self-discipline. Essentially, this is the realization that we are to do our own inner work. It is the same thing that Jesus was pointing to when he said, "Why are you so concerned about the speck in your brother's eye that you do not see the log in your own eye? First deal with the log in your own eye, then you will be equipped to deal with the speck in your brother's eye." Do you know it is the same teaching, really, out of the recovery movement, that we are to do our own work. We are to take our own fearless moral inventory, not somebody else's, even though we might be tempted to do so. And so His Holiness gives a very simple but very concrete and important homework assignment, if you will, and that is the consistent practice of self-discipline, of working on ourselves. This is at the heart and soul of our unity practice. To work at the level of consciousness, to work at the level of our thoughts, of our feelings, independent of circumstance, and situation. It is easy to hold a peaceful, happy, joyous feeling inside when everything is going the way you want it to. That does not take any practice. It takes a heck of a lot of practice to practice being peaceful and calm and centered when things are chaotic or conflicted or anything but what you want to be happening. Can you imagine what the world might be like if every one of us reduced by 25% our television watching time, our internet surfing time, our texting time? I don't know what else to throw in there, but you get the general feel. And instead devoted that time, 25% of it, to training the mind, to meditating, to practicing heart math techniques like we do in our meditation, where we focus on the heart, where we lock into the volitional practice of a positive feeling such as appreciation or loving kindness or genuine care. That we have the ability to create and hold those feelings internally irrespective of what is going on around us. That is part and parcel of self-discipline and training the mind. While we were away, we were visiting a little cafe, and all throughout Croatia and Slovenia, in many of the places you'll see signs, free Wi-Fi. And we came upon this one that had a unique poster, unique sign that said, no free Wi-Fi. Talk to each other. I loved that. No free Wi-Fi. You can clap for that. Talk to each other. Talk to each other. Second practice he would give us is probably one that he's most known for, and that is the practice of loving kindness. Say that with me. The practice of loving kindness. The practice of loving kindness. You know, as I say that, I think about our mission statement. And really, the focus on the first practice I just gave you from him, which is a practice of self-discipline, of working on oneself, is the first half of our mission statement, isn't it? Inspiring personal greatness is about each of us as an individual being our best selves. The second part of our mission statement is about the extension beyond ourselves, that we're not here just to grow only for ourselves and our own betterment. We are here to grow and become as good as we can possibly be, to be of service to the larger human family, starting right where we are. And this is why and he's certainly not the only one, we can look at Jesus' teachings, we can look at the Buddha's teachings, the practice of loving kindness. He says we can live without religion and meditation. Think about that for a moment. Here is a religious leader. Here is a man who wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning to be in meditation. I believe it is for 3 hours before he has his breakfast. I was up at 3 o'clock this morning, but I wasn't meditating. I'm trying to get over jet lag. And I thought about him, He says we can live without religion and meditation, but we cannot survive without human affection. We cannot survive without human affection. Love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Necessities, not luxuries. I'm reminded of having learned in high school of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. That at the very base of our needs are physiological needs. Food, air, water. When those physiological needs are satisfied, there's another set of needs. Needs for safety, that we are not threatened by an animal, something wild, something that can hurt us, that we feel physically safe. when those needs are met in an individual or in a society, then there's a third higher level of need. And do you know what that is? The need for belonging and love. The need for belonging and love. We need each other. Not from a place of neediness, which is not healthy, but we need each other from a place of when I can serve you, when I can be compassionate toward you, I become better. When you share compassion with me, when you help me, I become better. It's a reciprocal universe. His Holiness often says, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. That makes sense, right? If you want other people to be happy, practice compassion. But then he says, if you want to be happy, practice compassion. And that is based on an understanding that we do, in fact, live in a reciprocal universe. What we put out does come back to us, but it is even more than that. When you are giving compassion toward another, when you are holding in your heart genuine care for another, you first experience it before you can send it forth to the other. It is in part, I think, why our prayer partners here at the center love the work they do. They love to pray with you. Why? They believe in the power of prayer, obviously. But they also know that as they are praying for you, as they are knowing the truth for you, holding the highest thought for you, that they are experiencing that upliftment of consciousness for themselves as well. A third practice that he gives is the importance, the criticalness now actually, of us living as responsible global citizens. Responsible global citizens. When I was a young person, I never heard of the idea of global citizenship. I only heard about national citizenship. I only heard about what it meant to be an American, of our history, and the things for which we should be proud, and the shoulders of others that we stand on. But I never heard as a young person this idea of global citizenship. His Holiness says we must recognize that the suffering of one person or one nation is the suffering of humanity. The suffering of one person or one nation is the suffering of humanity. That the happiness of one person or nation is the happiness of humanity. That all people and things are interdependent. All people and things are interdependent. The world has become so small that no nation can solve its problems in isolation from others. Amen. Are we not living in times that evidence this so strongly? What's happening in Europe with this mass migration out of Serbia as people are trying to leave horrific situations and establish themselves in a place of safety and to at least have a chance to build a safe and just life for themselves and their families. Europe, all of Europe, is struggling to figure out how to accommodate and make sense of this mass migration. The countries can't act independently. They have to act and think interdependently. We had a very real and vivid experience of this while we were in Croatia and Slovenia on our trip. We had started in Croatia, we drove up the Dalmatian coast, drove into Slovenia, which is a country that borders Croatia on the north, spent some time in Slovenia. While we were there, we learned that Croatia had closed its borders to Serbia. We were concerned, were we going to have any difficulty getting back into Croatia, which we needed to do because our next flight was out of the capital of Croatia. So we contacted our hotel person and asked, and he said, no, you won't have any problem. The border is reopening. So as we are driving across the border from Slovenia into Croatia, we're also seeing those coming out of Croatia trying to cross the border and actually make their way toward Germany, and some going on to England, as I know you've heard in the news. And what we saw was mind-boggling and heart-wrenching. We saw car after car and truck after truck trying to get across. It was gridlocked. For miles, everything was at a standstill. But not only did we see all this traffic, largely, almost completely because of this mass migration, we saw people setting up tents as they were waiting. We don't know how long. Families were in their tents waiting for a chance for freedom, waiting for a chance for safety. All people and all things, he says, are interdependent. The world has become so small that no nation can solve its problems alone in isolation from others. To keep our hearts open, even if it hurts sometimes to keep them open. To keep our hearts open to the very real difficulties that so many people are experiencing today. Even if we can't personally interact, if we will keep our hearts open, we will cultivate a degree of compassion that will make a difference. Each of us has an opportunity through the words we use, through the way that we talk about the situations in the world, to help bring compassion to the world and reduce anger and reduce intolerance and reduce prejudice. To keep our hearts open is not always easy to do, but it is essential to do as a spiritual person, but also as someone who is trying to live ethically. His Holiness says, in the practice of tolerance, one's enemy is one's best teacher. In the practice of tolerance, one's enemy is one's best teacher. This from a man who has seen so much being done to his people, the people that he cares so very much about, recognizing that even in the midst of that horror, he has a choice in the way he's going to respond. You see, we are called to live on higher ground. We are called to rise above. We are called not to play at the level of race consciousness, but to play at the level of the vision of the world that we want to co-create together. And that requires a different degree of commitment and practice. And then the last that he speaks about so frequently that I think we can each take as a piece of our own homework assignment as well, is caring for our precious planet. He says, our beautiful world is facing many crises. This is not a time to pretend everything's good. I like that. It's not a time to pretend that everything's good with Mother Earth. He says, our ancestors viewed the earth as rich and bountiful, which it is. Many people in the past also saw nature as inexhaustibly sustainable, which we know is the case only if we care for it. And here's the clinchers. It's not difficult to forgive destruction in the past that resulted from ignorance. However, today we have access to more information, and it is essential that we re-examine ethically what we have inherited, what we are responsible for, and what we will pass on to coming generations. So once we know, the ethical response is we can't pretend that we don't. We can't pretend that it doesn't matter, the choices that we make. We can't pretend that it's not part of being spiritual. It's right smack in the center of being spiritual. And it's right smack in the center of living with compassion. And let me close with two of my favorite statements of his. He says so often that his religion is simple. His religion is kindness. It's one of my favorite quotes of his. But one I like even better than that is this one. Be kind whenever it is possible. Be kind whenever it is possible. It is always possible. It is always possible. Namaste.